Welcome back to the deep dive. We're always analyzing these big strategic shifts happening, under the surface of the internet, trying to translate that raw data into something useful, actionable knowledge.
Right.
For years, we've talked, maybe complained a bit, about the failings of Web 2.0, the surveillance stuff, data leaks, that constant pressure, to perform for this huge generalized audience. But today, the conversation shifts. It's not just critique anymore. It feels like confirmation. We're looking at a really profound and seemingly successful digital paradigm change.
That's exactly it. We're tracking a pretty comprehensive strategic report. They're calling it the private network revolution.
Okay.
And it really is a movement, a mass migration away from those giant centralized platforms towards something quite new. Small, intimate, self-sovereign digital spaces.
Sovereign, I like that.
Yeah. And our focus today is really unpacking the data that validates this shift.
Yeah.
And it's specifically fueled by this Web4.community V2 update.
The V2 update. That's the tech catalyst here, isn't it?
It seems to be.
It apparently made it super easy for pretty much anyone, not just tech wizards, to deploy and, importantly, manage their own microsocial network, an MSN.
Right. Effortless is the key word there.
Think about that. An environment where you, the user, you're the sole data sovereign, and the proof, the scale of adoption seems undeniable. Looking at the last 30 days of performance data for this infrastructure, one number just leaps out.
Let me guess.
A staggering 3.02 terabytes of bandwidth processed.
Yep, that's the one. And that single figure, it's kind of the strategic validation the market needed, wasn't it?
It feels like it.
It tells us this isn't just some theoretical trend or a slow, cautious pivot. It's more like an explosion of genuine, high-value interaction.
Okay.
It suggests that when people move into a space they manage themselves, a trusted digital space, they're immediately more willing to share richer, more meaningful content. Sensitive stuff, even.
So it's more than just tech changing.
Oh, absolutely. The report frames it as a profound victory. For user control, yes, but also for mental well-being. And fundamentally for building specialized, focused communities, the kind of thing the noise of the old internet actively suppressed.
Right.
We're basically mapping the return from that chaotic public square back to the secure private forum.
Okay, let's unpack that. Let's really drill into the strategic meaning behind these numbers, that 3.002 terabyte figure.
Yeah.
We need to translate that.
Yeah.
What does it tell us about user psychology, about actual behavior?
Yeah, it's not just big numbers for the sake of it. It's about the quality, the intention behind what's happening inside these private spaces.
Makes sense.
The report calls this section the bandwidth narrative, aptly named, I think.
Why bandwidth specifically?
Well, because bandwidth is essentially the best proxy we have for content richness. You have to contrast this volume with, say, typical Web 2.0 interactions.
Like basic text posts or status updates.
Exactly. If that 3.02 TB was just text messages or simple updates, we'd be talking kilobytes, maybe a few megabytes per user. The total would be tiny in comparison.
Right. Insignificant. But terabytes, especially scaling up over just 30 days, that implies a huge amount of multimedia exchange.
Precisely. We're talking high-resolution photo albums shared within families, high-fidelity video updates, maybe long-form documents for professional groups, educational materials packed with graphics.
Things that eat up data.
Things that eat up data. And this volume, it basically proves the core function of these MSNs is that exchange of rich media. Content people were probably keeping locked away on their hard drives before.
Because they wouldn't share it publicly.
Well, yeah. This leads to the critical insight, doesn't it? These are the kinds of assets, photos, videos, sensitive documents that users naturally hesitate or just flat out refuse to share on big public platforms.
Why?
Because of legitimate concerns about ownership, who might see it, the chance of it being scraped or monetized, drill.
Yeah, the usual Web 2.0 anxieties.
Exactly. So they found this trusted, controlled environment for deeper, more sensitive sharing, and boom, they're immediately filling it with their most valuable digital stuff.
And the pace of this.
Yeah.
That's what really seals it for me. It confirms this isn't just a niche thing. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
That total bandwidth figure, already huge, right? Yeah. It's backed up by this explosive nonlinear growth rate. The data specifically shows, get this, a staggering IFE 103.98% week-over-week growth in bandwidth use.
Wow, over 500% in a week.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not just incremental scaling, that's transformative. It basically sets a new performance benchmark for the platform, doesn't it?
It has to.
A spike like that in content richness and traffic volume over just 7 days.
Yeah.
It tells a story of immediate high utility. It suggests the users launching these networks aren't just, dipping their toes in.
They're diving in head first.
It seems like it. They find the platform indispensable right away. They invite their core circle. That circle immediately starts contributing high-value content, and the whole cycle just rapidly reinforces itself.
Which confirms the market's, enthusiastic adoption of this private sovereign model.
Enthusiastic's probably the right word, yeah.
Okay, so that's the content. What about the users themselves? We need to look at how the user base jumps so fast. The growth story gets even clearer when we look at the acquisition metrics.
All right.
The report notes a very 561.57% jump in visits. Now, this isn't the typical pattern you see with Web 2.0 growth, is it? That often relies on SEO, paid ads, broad public virality.
That's a crucial distinction. The very nature of a private network means you need either a direct invitation or some known relationship with the network owner to get in.
Because you can't just stumble upon it.
Exactly. Therefore, this massive jump in visits, it's basically the definition of a targeted viral adoption model. Users themselves are acting as these highly effective, self-selecting gatekeepers.
Meaning, it's not random traffic clicking a link somewhere.
Nope. Not low-value traffic acquisition at all. Users are actively bringing in highly relevant contacts, their specific work team, their closest family members, maybe people dedicated to a very specific niche hobby.
So it bypasses all that filtering and noise you get elsewhere.
Precisely. It represents high-value user acquisition, but happening at scale. The first user deploys the network, invites maybe 10 people.
And those 10 people are instantly dedicated participants, not just casual browsers.
Right. Which dramatically lowers the acquisition cost for the whole ecosystem.
Yeah.
And it ensures that every new member immediately adds to the collective value, fostering this atmosphere of mutual relevance.
Okay, but we have to talk architecture for a second.
Right.
Processing over 3 terabytes of rich media, supporting a 500% traffic increase week over week. That sounds like it needs an extremely robust engine underneath.
Absolutely. And there's an efficiency check in the data that seems to validate this. Page views are up 447.44%, while visits, as we said, are up 561.57%.
Okay, so visits grew a bit faster than page views, but they're tracking pretty closely despite that heavy load.
That close tracking is actually one of the most reassuring technical points in the report. It confirms the V2 platform architecture isn't just functional, it's incredibly optimized, efficient.
Even with a flood of new users and all that data?
Especially with that. Despite the massive influx, the terabytes of rich media, the system is delivering content rapidly, effectively.
Because if it were inefficient, what would we see?
You'd see a much wider gap. Visits might spike, sure, but page views would lag way behind. Because pages would load slowly, maybe networks would fail, users would get frustrated and just leave. Bounce off the site.
Right.
The fact that engagement page views is keeping pace with acquisition visits proves the engine is performing, well, seemingly flawlessly under what must be pretty extreme load for a new setup.
And that high performance is crucial for keeping users, right?
Yeah.
Especially people use it to the instant feel of the big platforms.
Essential for retention, absolutely.
Okay, so we've kind of established the how. The quantitative data, the numbers, they seem to prove this private network model is successful, it's exploding in adoption. But now let's pivot to the why.
Yeah, the really interesting part.
Why are users seemingly abandoning the giants, or at least supplementing them heavily, to flock to these self-managed spaces? We need to get beyond the metrics now and look at the qualitative side, the core structural human benefits driving this whole revolution.
Well, the foundation of it all, according to the report, is the strategic ability of these micro-social networks, these MSNs, to just fundamentally overturn the power dynamic we saw in Web 2.0.
How so?
The primary appeal, it states, is the immediate restoration of user privacy and data sovereignty. It's positioned as a necessary, direct contrast to what the report bluntly calls the surveillance capitalism model.
Surveillance capitalism. Yeah, that model operates by turning your interactions, your data, into a product to be sold.
Right.
So these private networks offer an escape hatch through something the report calls closed-loop data integrity. What does that mean exactly?
That specific phrase. It refers to the technical setup, how the data's flow is contained entirely within a clearly defined boundary. one that's managed by the owner of that specific MSN instance.
Okay.
So unlike Web 2.0, where your data is constantly flowing out through APIs, third-party trackers, internal monetization pipelines, you name it.
Right. Leaks everywhere.
Within an MSN, the data just stays put. The founder, the person who owns that network instance, they control the encryption keys, where it's stored, the access rules.
Which eliminates that risk of data being sold off or used in ways you didn't expect.
Exactly. It eliminates that sort of existential risk of data monetization by third parties or even unexpected policy changes from a big corporation down the line. Users get full clarity and control over how their content is used, period.
And this guarantee, this isolation, it's not just a minor feature. It's what makes sensitive sharing actually possible, which, as that 3 terabyte figure suggests, is exactly what people are doing.
Precisely. We're talking about, say, legal firms sharing proprietary case documents, financial analysts maybe exchanging early-stage market thoughts, or families discussing sensitive health matters, coordinating care for a relative.
Things you'd never post publicly.
Never. Or think about support groups or highly personal communities. Absolute non-negotiable privacy is the bedrock of trust and open dialogue there.
Makes sense.
When the network owner has direct control, they can guarantee that conversations about really personal issues, mental health, addiction recovery, maybe confidential work challenges, they just won't find their way onto some public timeline or get crunched by external algorithms looking for ways to make money off them.
And crucially, this structure changes the whole identity game too, doesn't it? The report calls it decentralized identity management. The network owner controls who gets in?
Yeah, and that's the complete opposite of the big monolithic identity providers we're used to.
How?
Well, under the old Web 2.0 way, you basically had to surrender your entire digital identity package, real name, contacts, location, preferences, everything, to a massive central company, just to connect with your own friends or family.
Right. You give everything to Facebook just to talk to your cousin.
Pretty much. In the MSN model, though, users only need to give minimal necessary identification to the network owner, someone they presumably already trust, just to access that specific micro network.
So you keep control over your overall digital footprint.
You maintain digital self-sovereignty across the rest of the web. You isolate the risk, maximize control over your personal data. It's a huge shift.
Okay, so privacy and data control are huge drivers. But moving beyond security, this intentional shift towards smaller, more intimate networks seems to be having big positive effects on user well-being, too.
Yes, definitely. The report strongly suggests this. Large social media platforms are, let's be honest, frequently cited as contributing to various mental health hazards.
Yeah, anxiety, comparison, all that.
Right. But MSNs seem structurally positioned as a direct antidote to many of those issues.
How does that work?
Well, the most immediate psychological benefit seems to be the elimination of performance anxiety. Think about it. On a public platform, you're constantly under the gaze of this potentially huge audience of weak ties, acquaintances.
People you barely know sometimes.
Exactly. And that creates intense pressure to constantly curate this perfect, aspirational online self, which is, frankly, deeply stressful and exhausting. It's driven purely by needing external validation.
But if you're only sharing with a small, intimate, trusted group, your family, your 4 best friends, your specific work study group,
that pressure just dissolves completely. Users feel free to share authentically, unedited photos, actual daily struggles, opinions that might be nuanced or unpopular and wouldn't survive a big public comment section.
And that shift naturally leads to less stress.
Immediately. A massive reduction in stress, anxiety, and that debilitating social comparison that fuels so much validation-seeking behavior online.
What's fascinating here is it seems like a structural shift away from addiction towards actual focus.
That's a key point the report makes. Large, centralized platforms are deliberately engineered around algorithmic feeds designed for maximum addictive scrolling.
The infinite scroll.
Right. They use variable reward schedules, keep scrolling. Maybe you'll find something interesting. It's like slot machine mechanics, basically, all to optimize for time spent on the platform.
But private networks break that loop.
Inherently, they're purposefully focused.
Yeah.
You go into an MSN to do something specific, share a document, coordinate an event, discuss a particular detail about your hobby.
It's transactional almost.
Transactional and purposeful. Time spent in these spaces represents a fundamental structural shift from optimizing for time spent to optimizing for value exchange.
I like that distinction, value exchange.
Yeah. And this promotes a healthier, more mindful, more intentional online presence. Users feel productive, not drained.
And there's a sociological benefit too, right? Reinforcing strong ties.
Absolutely. Centralized networks, the big ones, they primarily optimize for discovering and maintaining weak ties. That casual acquaintance from a conference years ago.
Because more connections means a bigger network overall.
Exactly. It maximizes network size. But private MSNs, just by their nature, optimize for strong ties. Close friends, immediate family, highly trusted colleagues.
I mean, why does that matter?
Well, sociological studies consistently show that while weak ties are good for getting broad information, it's your strong ties that provide essential resilience, emotional support, the stuff that really matters.
There's people who actually show up for you.
Precisely. So by facilitating deeper, more frequent interaction among these core relationships, the platform actively strengthens those vital emotional and social support structures. This is where digital interaction can directly improve real-world community health.
Okay, so we have privacy, well-being, stronger relationships. What about actually running these communities? When you hand the keys back to the individual organizer, that sounds like democratizing governance.
It is. It replaces those often baffling one-size-fits-all rules from a global giant with highly tailored, ethically defined community cultures.
And the key benefit there is
contextual moderation. Think about it. The network owner, whether they're a professional trainer, a community leader, or just the family organizer, they understand the community's specific context, its history, its inside jokes, its professional jargon.
way better than some generic algorithm or a remote moderation team working off a universal rulebook.
Miles better. And this allows for moderation that's nuanced, flexible, and fundamentally fairer.
So, like, a term might be okay in one specific niche group.
Right. Maybe it's acceptable slang or an inside joke in a forum for, 19th century maritime history buffs. It's allowed there. But if that same term is genuinely nasty or abusive in a different network,
The owner there can just remove it instantly.
exactly. It protects the community's specific culture without imposing arbitrary universal rules that often just alienate these highly specialized groups.
But hang on, a critical question comes up here. If you empower a single founder, are you just swapping one central authority, the CEO of big tech platform X, for another, the network owner? What about checks and balances?
That's a really important point, and the report does address it. It details the transparency and governance tools built into V2. So while the owner technically holds the keys to the server and the data,
There are safeguards.
yeah, the toolset includes features for things like transparent logging of moderation actions, customizable community review mechanisms, and, crucially, the ability for members to easily download their own data archives.
So they can leave with their stuff if things go sour.
Right. And the small scale itself is probably the biggest check. If a founder becomes arbitrary or abusive in a network of, say, 50 people, that network can just dissolve instantly. People leave. There's none of the inertia you have with a giant platform.
That makes sense. And that intimate scale must have implications for misinformation, too.
Transformative implications. Within a high-trust network of maybe 50 or even 500 people, the signal-to-noise ratio is just dramatically better.
Easier to spot the junk.
Much easier. Dubious content, obvious external malicious stuff. It gets flagged and identified almost instantly by members who trust each other and know the community context.
So the owner can act fast.
Immediately, based on internal consensus, protecting members from external garbage far faster and more effectively than platforms struggling to moderate billions of posts daily.
So what does this all mean, this democratization?
Yeah.
What does it mean for the average person who wants to lead a community, organize something?
It means ownership of digital infrastructure isn't just for programmers or big tech anymore. That's the key takeaway. The Web4 Community V2 toolset ensures that building and managing a fully functional private social network requires absolutely zero coding knowledge.
Zero coding, that's huge.
Cannot be overstated. This level of infrastructure empowerment truly democratizes leadership. It means creative leaders, specialized educators, community organizers, small business owners, people who are typically not programmers.
They can build the exact digital space they actually need.
Exactly. They're no longer forced to try and twist their unique community needs into the prepackaged, often restrictive templates provided by, the Facebooks or LinkedIns of the world. They become the architects of their own culture, their own commerce even.
Okay, let's talk about that. Innovation and niche economic growth. This mix of intimacy, control, efficiency. It seems like it would directly translate into speeding things up, economically or intellectually.
It does. The report argues that private MSNs are accelerating specialized innovation. by creating these secure, high-quality environments for sharing ideas and collaborating environments that just didn't really exist in the same way before.
Give me an example.
Okay, think about high-value professional networks, sectors dealing with complex, proprietary data, advanced R&D, specialized legal consulting, maybe closed financial trading groups.
Places where public forums are a non-starter. Too risky.
Way too risky. And the friction of security reviews, NDAs, all that, it often delays sharing essential information.
But MSNs remove that friction.
Largely, yes. They offer a secure, closed alternative. Trust is guaranteed, identity is verified by the owner. So these high-stakes professional groups can share early-stage concepts, proprietary data, complex problem-solving ideas, internal feedback.
In an environment with basically zero threat of external leaks.
Right. And that guaranteed high-security environment just speeds up collaborative decision-making. Innovation cycles get shorter, dramatically so in some cases.
We're also seeing growth in exclusive educational hubs. Right?
Tremendous growth.
Yeah.
Teachers, expert trainers, course creators, they're leveraging this model to build really focused learning environments.
Wow.
They can run direct, focused Q&A sessions, foster peer-to-peer support without all the external noise and interference, and critically, they can distribute their intellectual property course materials, videos, sensitive documents securely.
And the report suggests this actually leads to better educational outcomes.
Measurably better, it claims, because the learning environment is free from that constant stream of external distractions, ads, notifications, unrelated content that plagues public platforms. The focus stays entirely on the material and the interaction between students and the instructor.
Okay, finally, let's talk commerce, because trust is usually the foundation of any transaction.
And that's where this model really shines, potentially. The high trust inherent in these networks seems to translate directly into measurable success for micro-community commerce.
Meaning?
Boutique businesses, niche consultants, specialized creators, they're using MSNs for things like exclusive member-only sales, offering early access to products, delivering highly personalized premium services only to network members.
Because the trust is already there.
Exactly. When you establish a high-trust environment defined by strong ties, the whole economic logic changes. Transactional friction practically disappears.
So conversion rates go up, customer loyalty too.
Skyrocket, potentially, because customers trust the recommendations, they trust the offerings, they trust the founder and the other members implicitly.
Which means they can effectively bypass expensive generalized marketing campaigns.
Pretty much. They rely instead on authentic community connection to drive sustainable, high-margin sales within this defined, loyal ecosystem. It's like niche, direct-to-consumer commerce, but perfected.
Wow, okay. So we started this deep dive with that really startling figure, 3.02 terabytes of bandwidth, processed in just 30 days. And I think through this analysis, we've confirmed that number isn't some fluke.
No, not at all.
It really is the signature of a profound strategic pivot, signaling, maybe, a successful departure from those centralized, surveillance-heavy platforms that have dominated the digital world for, over a decade now?
Yeah, if we connect this to the bigger picture, this Web4.Community v2 update, it feels like much more than just a software launch. It feels like a strategically successful pivot towards a genuinely distributed, more human-centric internet architecture.
And the metrics back that up.
Overwhelmingly. The extraordinary growth numbers we talked about, the efficiency, the high-value viral adoption, that 500% spike in content richness, it all validates this massive, maybe latent market demand for self-sovereign private digital spaces.
So by successfully empowering individuals, small groups, giving them tools that don't need technical expertise to deploy, own, and manage their own microsocial networks.
Web4.Community seems to be leading the charge, helping create a digital world that feels fundamentally healthier, more authentic, and maybe far more resilient against those pressures of centralized control and performance anxiety we discussed.
It feels like a genuinely positive vision for the future of digital communication, demonstrably positive based on this data.
And that leads us to maybe a final provocative thought, something for you, the listener, to reflect on.
Okay.
Since this private network revolution optimizes almost entirely for strong, deep ties, those core relationships that give actual support and value rather than the weak, superficial ties that big platforms prioritize,
right?
How might the undeniable measured success of these micro-communities, how might it ultimately generate enough market pressure to actually force the big centralized platforms of Web 2.0 to adapt, to change their fundamental business models away from addiction and surveillance and back towards prioritizing genuine, high-value user interaction?
That tension point. between the old model and this new self-sovereign one.
That's where the next decade of digital evolution is likely going to be decided. It's definitely something to watch.